High Admiral Krixval's crystalline vessel pierced through Earth's atmosphere, its prismatic hull refracting sunlight in patterns that would have seemed magical to humans just a century ago. As the ship descended toward Earth's elite combat academy, the Centaurian commander felt nothing but contempt for the primitive world below. His species had mastered interstellar travel when humans were still discovering electricity, yet somehow these beings had earned a fearsome reputation across 3 galactic sectors. The landing pad beckoned, a simple concrete structure that only reinforced his prejudices. Where were the gravity dampeners? The neural interface systems? Even the most basic molecular restructuring pads? He clicked his mandibles in disapproval as his ship's advanced systems compensated for the crude landing facilities. Colonel Diana Blackwood waited on the pad, her ceremonial dress uniform pristine despite the wash from the alien vessel's landing thrusters. Unlike most humans who had encountered Centaurians, she showed no sign of discomfort at Krixval's imposing appearance, his 3-meter height, iridescent exoskeleton, or the multiple compound eyes that studied her with obvious disdain. "High Admiral," she said, her voice carrying easily across the pad. "Welcome to Earth's elite combat academy. We're honored by your presence." She didn't offer her hand, already briefed on Centaurian customs regarding physical contact with lesser species. Krixval emerged from his ship, his crystalline armor catching the sunlight. "Colonel Blackwood. Your reputation precedes you. Though I must admit, I expected someone more impressive." His universal translator conveyed the intentional slight perfectly. Blackwood's expression didn't change. "Impressiveness comes in many forms, High Admiral. Shall we begin the tour?" As they walked through the academy grounds, Krixval observed the training facilities with growing skepticism. Cadets ran obstacle courses using nothing but their own muscle power. Others practiced with projectile weapons that still relied on chemical propellants. In one area, humans fought hand-to-hand, their movements seeming crude and inefficient to his enhanced vision. "Tell me, Colonel," Krixval said, gesturing toward a group of cadets struggling through a mud pit under simulated plasma fire, "do you truly believe these primitive methods prepare your species for modern warfare?" Blackwood stopped walking and turned to face him. "High Admiral, do you know why Earth is classified as a death world by galactic standards?" "Obviously. Your gravity is crushing, your atmosphere corrosive, your temperature variations extreme, and your wildlife lethal. It's remarkable your species survived long enough to develop space flight." "And yet we did," Blackwood replied. "Every cadet you see here was born into struggle. They learned to walk under gravity that would crush most species. They survived in an environment that tries to kill them daily. Their bodies can process toxins that would dissolve your exoskeleton. That's before we even begin their training." A commotion drew their attention to the hand-to-hand combat arena. 2 cadets were sparring, one massive and muscular, the other smaller and quick. The larger cadet, Jenkins, had his opponent, Rodriguez, pinned. But instead of yielding, Rodriguez twisted in a way that should have broken bones, slipped free, and used Jenkins' own momentum to throw him. "Interesting," Krixval admitted reluctantly. "But hardly relevant in an age of quantum weaponry and psionic shields." "That's where you're wrong," Blackwood said. "Cadet Rodriguez. A moment, please." The smaller cadet jogged over, barely winded despite the intense sparring match. Krixval noted with surprise that the human's vital signs showed minimal stress. "Sir." "Ma'am." Rodriguez snapped to attention. "Tell the High Admiral about your background," Blackwood ordered. "Yes, ma'am. 3rd-generation colonist from Nueva Terra, sir. Gravity there's 1.3 Earth standard. Atmospheres loaded with chlorine compounds. Lost my parents to the native predators when I was 12. Survived alone for 6 months before rescue came." Krixval's antenna twitched. "Impossible. No child could survive. I made weapons from local minerals," Rodriguez continued. Learned which plants were poisonous to the predators. Used the chlorine storms for cover. Adapted. And that, Blackwood said as she dismissed the cadet, is why we train the way we do. Every human is a product of a death world. We don't need advanced technology to be lethal, though we certainly use it when we have it. We need humans who can think, adapt, and survive when everything else fails. Their tour continued to the advanced training facilities, where Krixval's disdain began to fade slightly. Cadets operated simulator pods that ran combat scenarios too dangerous for live practice. Others worked with captured alien technology, their innovations often improving upon the original designs. Impressive, Krixval admitted, watching a cadet methodically disassemble and reassemble a Drachnid plasma rifle. Though I notice you've modified the containment matrix. Standard design couldn't handle Earth's magnetic field fluctuations, Blackwood explained. Cadet Thompson there figured out how to compensate using locally sourced materials. We've since implemented her design across all our plasma weapons. The tour was interrupted by a sudden alarm. Blackwood's hand went to her communicator as red lights began flashing across the compound. Her expression hardened as she listened to the incoming message. "It seems you're in luck, High Admiral," she said, her voice tight. "You wanted to see how we handle real combat situations. We've got multiple breaches in the quantum containment facility. Several experimental weapons are loose, and they're drawing power from our own defense grid." Krixval's compound eyes widened. "Surely you'll evacuate. Such a breach would require a full battle fleet to contain." Blackwood was already moving, barking orders into her communicator. "This is our home, Admiral. We don't abandon it. You wanted to see how humans fight. Watch carefully." As alert klaxons blared and cadets rushed to battle stations, Krixval felt his first flicker of uncertainty. Perhaps there was more to these Deathworlders than he had assumed. The real test of humanity's capabilities was about to begin, and despite himself, he was eager to witness it. The quantum containment facility's alarms grew louder as Colonel Blackwood led High Admiral Krixval toward the command center. Emergency lights painted the corridors in alternating patterns of red and white, while cadets moved with practiced efficiency to their designated positions. "Status report," Blackwood demanded as they entered the command center. The large circular room was a hive of activity, with holographic displays showing real-time updates of the crisis. Lieutenant Walsh, a battle-scarred veteran with cybernetic augmentations visible along her temples, responded without looking up from her console. "3 Class X quantum weapons have broken containment, ma'am. They've already interfaced with our power grid and are showing signs of emergent intelligence. Current locations: Engineering Block B, Training Arena 7, and the main reactor facility." Krixval's antennae twitched in alarm. "Class X weapons? You keep quantum sapient armaments in a training facility?" "We study what we capture," Blackwood replied grimly. "Knowledge is survival. Lieutenant, deploy the cadets according to Protocol Omega-7. I want containment teams at all 3 locations within 5 minutes." "The cadets?" Krixval's translator struggled to convey his mix of disbelief and horror. "These are weapons that could reduce this entire continent to quantum foam. You need specialized troops, not children playing at war." Blackwood's eyes narrowed. "Those children have trained for exactly this scenario. Watch and learn, Admiral." The command center's main display showed 3 teams of cadets moving into position. Each squad was led by a senior cadet, their movements precise and coordinated. What caught Krixval's attention was their equipment, or rather, the lack of it. "They're carrying primitive projectile weapons," he observed. "Against quantum entities? Standard energy weapons would only feed them," Walsh explained, her cybernetics glowing as she coordinated the response teams. "Sometimes the old ways are the best ways." The first engagement began in Engineering Block B. The quantum weapon had manifested as a swirling vortex of purple energy, consuming everything in its path and growing stronger with each absorption. Cadet Team Alpha, led by Senior Cadet Jackson, approached with what appeared to be modified rail guns. "Those projectiles," Krixval leaned forward, his compound eyes focusing on the weapons. "They're not standard ammunition. Depleted uranium cores wrapped in quantum-dampening alloys," Blackwood confirmed. "Developed by our cadets after the last containment breach. The projectiles disrupt the quantum field while the kinetic impact destabilizes the entity's coherence." Krixval watched in fascination as Team Alpha executed a perfectly coordinated attack. 3 cadets laid down suppressing fire, forcing the quantum entity to maintain its current form, while 2 others flanked with grappling equipment. The entity lashed out with tendrils of energy, but the humans moved with incredible speed, dodging attacks that should have been impossible to avoid. "Their reaction times," Krixval muttered. "How?" "Growth hormone optimization, neural enhancement, and good old-fashioned training," Walsh answered. "Every cadet here has been modified to operate at peak human potential. But more importantly, they've learned to think tactically." As if to prove her point, Senior Cadet Jackson made a series of hand signals, and his team shifted formation. The quantum entity had begun to adapt to their attack pattern, but before it could fully compensate, the humans changed tactics. 2 cadets fired their grappling lines through the entity's mass while another launched an EMP grenade into its core. The combination of disruptions caused the entity to fluctuate, its purple energy field flickering erratically. Jackson seized the moment, firing a specially designed containment capsule into the weakened vortex. The quantum weapon, unable to maintain coherence under the multiple attacks, was sucked into the capsule. "One down," Blackwood announced, but her expression remained tense. "Teams Beta and Gamma are engaging their targets now." The situation at Training Arena 7 was deteriorating rapidly. The quantum weapon there had taken control of the training drones, creating an army of automated defenders. Team Beta, led by Senior Cadet Rivera, faced withering fire from multiple directions. Instead of retreating, Rivera split her team into pairs, utilizing the arena's obstacle course for cover. Krixval observed with growing interest as the humans demonstrated their ability to turn the environment to their advantage. They used the very training equipment they had practiced on to outmaneuver their mechanized opponents. "Remarkable," he admitted. "They're treating the quantum weapon's adaptations as part of their training scenario." "Everything is training," Blackwood said. "Every crisis, every failure, every near-death experience, it all goes into making them better soldiers." Rivera's team executed a series of coordinated jumps and slides that would have been impossible under normal gravity. Their augmented muscles and enhanced reflexes allowed them to move in ways that defied Krixval's understanding of human limitations. "But the real threat," Walsh interrupted, "is in the reactor facility. The third weapon is attempting to merge with our fusion core. If it succeeds, the resulting explosion would destroy everything within 100 kilometers," Krixval finished. "Surely now you'll consider evacuation." Blackwood's response was cut off by a new alarm. The main display showed Team Gamma engaging the third quantum weapon, but something was wrong. The entity had already partially merged with the reactor systems, creating a hybrid form that defied conventional tactics. "Team Gamma, fall back," Blackwood ordered, but the cadets held their position. "Negative, Colonel," Senior Cadet Patel's voice came through clearly despite the chaos. "If we retreat now, the entity will complete its merger. Request permission to execute Maneuver Deathworld 9. Blackwood's face paled. "That protocol is theoretical, Cadet. It's never been tested outside simulation. With respect, ma'am, everything's theoretical until someone tries it." A moment of tense silence filled the command center. Krixval looked between the humans, sensing the weight of the decision. Finally, Blackwood nodded. "Permission granted. All other teams, clear the reactor facility immediately. High Admiral, you might want to brace yourself. You're about to see why we're called Deathworlders." As Team Gamma began their desperate maneuver, Krixval realized his assessment of human capabilities would need serious revision, assuming they all survived the next few minutes. As Team Gamma initiated Maneuver Deathworld 9, High Admiral Krixval witnessed something that challenged his fundamental understanding of human capabilities. Senior Cadet Patel and his team began removing their protective gear, exposing themselves to the lethal radiation emanating from the partially merged quantum entity. "They'll die," Krixval exclaimed, his crystalline armor automatically adjusting to shield him from the increasing radiation levels shown on the command center's displays. "No," Colonel Blackwood replied, her eyes fixed on the screen. "They'll adapt." The cadets of Team Gamma moved with purpose, their skin beginning to take on a faint bluish glow. Lieutenant Walsh's fingers flew across her console as she monitored their vital signs. "Radiation absorption at 300% normal human tolerance," Walsh reported. "Genetic modifications activating. Cellular restructuring beginning." Krixval watched in fascination and horror as the cadets' bodies began to change. Their muscles densified, skin hardening into a natural armor as their bodies adapted to the extreme conditions. What truly shocked him was their coherent coordination despite the transformation. "Impossible," he muttered. "The pain alone should incapacitate them." "Pain is temporary," Patel's voice came through the calm, strained but determined. "Failure is forever." The team positioned themselves around the reactor core, their transformed bodies now acting as living radiation sinks. The quantum entity, drawn to their heightened energy signatures, began to split its attention between them and the reactor. "Now we understand why you maintain such primitive training methods," Krixval said, his earlier disdain replaced by growing comprehension. "You're not training soldiers. You're creating adaptive weapons." "We're teaching survival," Blackwood corrected. "Every human is born with the potential for adaptation. We just help them unlock it." In the reactor facility, Team Gamma had formed a perfect pentagon around the quantum entity. Their bodies, now pulsing with absorbed radiation, created a destabilizing field that disrupted the entity's attempt to merge with the reactor. "Phase 2 initiating," Patel announced. "Team, prepare for resonance synchronization." What followed defied Krixval's understanding of biology. The transformed cadets began emitting specific radiation frequencies, turning their bodies into living quantum dampeners. The entity, caught in their field, started to lose coherence. Meanwhile, Teams Alpha and Beta had secured their sectors and converged on the reactor facility. They took up supporting positions, their specialized weapons ready to capitalize on any weakness their transformed comrades could create. "Their bodies," Krixval observed, "they're not just adapting to the radiation. They're weaponizing it. Humans evolved on a planet that tries to kill us daily," Walsh explained, her cybernetics glowing as she coordinated the teams. "We learned to turn every threat into an advantage." The quantum entity lashed out violently, its purple energy tendrils whipping through the air with increasing desperation. One tendril struck Cadet Thompson, throwing her against a wall with enough force to crack reinforced concrete. But instead of falling, she pushed herself up, her transformed body absorbing the impact. "Thompson's bone density has increased by 400%, Walsh reported. "She's still combat effective." The other teams seized the opportunity created by the entity's attack. While it was focused on Thompson, Jackson and Rivera led their teams in a coordinated strike. Modified rail guns fired in perfect synchronization, their quantum-dampening rounds passing through the gaps in Team Gamma's energy field. The entity's form began to destabilize, its attempts to merge with the reactor faltering as it fought attacks from multiple vectors. But victory came at a price. The radiation levels in the facility continued to climb, pushing even the transformed cadets to their limits. "Team Gamma's cellular integrity dropping," Walsh warned. "They can't maintain the field much longer." "We won't need longer," Patel responded, his voice barely recognizable through the strain. "Team, prepare for final resonance. All other units, clear the blast zone." Patel, your bodies won't survive a full resonance discharge, Blackwood warned. With respect, Colonel, survival isn't required. Success is. Before anyone could object, Team Gamma pushed their transformed bodies beyond their limits. They released all the absorbed radiation in a single, synchronized burst. The quantum entity, caught between their discharge and its failing merger with the reactor, collapsed in on itself. The command center's screens flickered as energy readings spiked off the charts. When they stabilized, the quantum entity was gone, trapped in a specialized containment field that had activated at the last moment. Team Gamma, report. Blackwood demanded. Silence filled the comm channel for several agonizing seconds. Then, remarkably, Patel's voice came through. Target, contained, Colonel, he managed. Team is, still functional. Mostly. Krixval stared at the readings in disbelief. Despite everything they had endured, despite pushing their bodies far beyond what should have been possible, the humans were still alive. More than that, they were already beginning to recover, their adaptive mutations slowly reversing. Now you begin to understand, Blackwood said quietly. This is why Earth is a death world. Not because of our dangerous environment, but because it created us. Everything that tries to kill us only makes us stronger. As medical teams rushed to assist the transformed cadets, Krixval found himself re-evaluating every assumption he had made about human potential. The true nature of their strength wasn't in their technology or their training methods, but in their unrelenting ability to adapt and overcome. The crisis was contained, but its implications would echo across the galaxy. Humanity had proven itself more dangerous, and more remarkable, than even their reputation suggested. And they were just getting started. In the aftermath of the quantum weapon crisis, High Admiral Krixval found himself in the Academy's medical wing, observing the recovery of Team Gamma. The transformed cadets lay in specialized containment pods, their bodies gradually returning to normal human baseline. Medical staff moved efficiently between pods, monitoring the reverse mutation process with practiced ease. You seem troubled, Admiral, Colonel Blackwood said, joining him at the observation window. Something on your mind? Many things, Colonel, Krixval replied, his compound eyes focusing on Cadet Patel's vital signs. I've studied countless species across the galaxy, but none quite like yours. You turn your weaknesses into strengths, your limitations into advantages. It's unsettling. Unsettling enough to recommend against an alliance with Earth? The question hung in the air, reminding Krixval of his true purpose here. The Centaurian Empire had sent him to evaluate humanity's potential as either allies or threats. After what he'd witnessed, he wasn't sure which designation worried him more. Tell me, Colonel, he said, turning to face her. How many of your cadets possess this adaptive capability? All of them, she answered simply. Though some show stronger manifestations than others. What you witnessed today wasn't just genetic modification or technological enhancement. It was the fundamental nature of human biology expressing itself. A commotion from one of the medical pods drew their attention. Cadet Thompson was awakening, her body still showing traces of the crystalline armor-like skin she had developed during the crisis. Instead of waiting for the reversal process to complete, she was already trying to sit up. Cadet, stand down, Blackwood ordered, but there was no real force behind her words. She knew what the response would be. Can't, ma'am, Thompson replied, her voice rough but determined. Need to document the transformation process while it's fresh. Could help improve our response protocols for next time. Always thinking ahead, Krixval observed. Always preparing for the next crisis. It's how we survived on Earth, Blackwood explained as they left the medical wing. Every catastrophe is a learning opportunity. Every failure teaches us something new about our capabilities. They walked through the Academy grounds, where cleanup crews were already repairing the damage from the quantum weapons. Cadets who hadn't been directly involved in the crisis were back at their training, incorporating lessons from the day's events into their exercises. "Your species confuses me, Colonel," Krixval admitted. "You have the technology for energy weapons, yet you train with primitive projectiles. You possess genetic engineering that could eliminate the need for physical combat, yet you insist on hand-to-hand training. You could create soldiers in laboratories, yet you choose to push your natural abilities to their limits instead." "Because technology can fail," Blackwood replied. "Genetic engineering can be countered. But the human drive to survive, to adapt, to overcome, that's constant. It's what kept us alive on Earth when everything around us wanted us dead. It's what helped us reach the stars despite our limitations." They reached a viewing platform overlooking the training grounds. Below, a new group of cadets was running combat drills. Krixval noticed they had already modified their tactics based on data from the quantum weapon incident. "Look there," Blackwood pointed to a pair of cadets sparring. "They're incorporating movements they observed from Team Gamma's transformed state. Not because they expect to mutate in combat, but because they recognize the tactical advantage of those motion patterns. Learning, adapting, even from experiences they haven't personally had," Krixval mused. "Your entire species is like a living weapon that constantly refines itself." "We prefer to think of ourselves as survivors," Blackwood corrected. "Everything else, the adaptations, the improvements, the innovations, they're just tools for ensuring that survival." In the distance, the sun was setting over the academy, casting long shadows across the training grounds. The day's events had fundamentally changed Krixval's understanding of humanity, but one question still nagged at him. "Colonel, your cadets nearly died containing those quantum weapons. Yet they never hesitated, never considered retreat. Why?" Blackwood smiled, but there was a hardness in her eyes that reminded Krixval of ancient predators. "Because retreat means something might survive to threaten Earth. And if there's one thing humans won't tolerate, it's a threat to our home. Even if facing that threat means changing yourselves into something inhuman. Admiral, what you call inhuman, we call necessity. Every adaptation, every transformation, every seemingly impossible feat of survival, it's all part of what makes us human. We don't just endure. We evolve." As night fell over the academy, Krixval began composing his report to the Centaurian Empire in his mind. How could he explain what he'd witnessed? How could he convey the true nature of humanity's strength? The quantum weapons had been contained, but he knew the real danger, and the real potential, lay in the species that had stopped them. The humans weren't just inhabitants of a death world. They were its children, shaped by its dangers, tempered by its challenges. And they were ready to bring that heritage to the stars. High Admiral Krixval stood at the landing pad where his journey had begun, but his perspective had shifted completely. His crystalline vessel waited to take him back to the Centaurian Empire, where his report would undoubtedly cause significant upheaval in the Galactic Council's assessment of humanity. "One last question, Colonel Blackwood," he said, turning to face the human officer. "Why show me everything? The adaptations, the transformations, the true extent of human capabilities? Surely keeping such advantages secret would benefit Earth in future conflicts." Blackwood's expression remained neutral, but there was a glimmer of something in her eyes, pride, perhaps, or amusement. "Because, Admiral, what you've seen is just the beginning. These aren't military secrets we're protecting. They're warnings." The implications of her statement sent a ripple through Krixval's crystalline armor. "You wanted the galaxy to know what humanity is capable of. More specifically," she corrected, "we wanted you to understand what happens when you back humans into a corner. Those quantum weapons you saw. They were just training tools. Imagine what we could do if Earth itself was threatened." Around them, the Academy continued its daily routine. Cadets ran drills, modified equipment, and pushed their bodies to new limits. Team Gamma had already returned to training, their recent transformations seemingly forgotten as they worked to improve their response protocols. Your report to the Empire, Blackwood continued, will tell them exactly what they need to know. That humanity isn't just surviving on a death world, we're thriving. That every challenge makes us stronger, every threat adds to our capabilities. And if the Empire sees this as a reason to strike first. Krixval challenged. Blackwood's smile turned predatory. Then they'll learn firsthand why Earth is called a death world. What you witnessed here was just a training exercise. Imagine an entire planet of humans, all pushed to their adaptive limits, all fighting to protect their home. The Admiral's analytical mind ran the calculations. A species that could transform their bodies in response to threats, that turned radiation into weapons, that saw near-death experiences as learning opportunities. The implications were staggering. There's something else you should know, Blackwood added. Those cadets you saw. They're our baseline now. Each generation of humans is becoming more adaptable, more resilient. Evolution didn't just prepare us for Earth, it prepared us for the galaxy. A group of new cadets marched past, their young faces belying the potential that lurked in their genes. Krixval realized that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology or their training methods, it was time itself. Every generation would be stronger than the last, more capable of surviving whatever the universe threw at them. I understand now, he said finally. Why the Galactic Council was so interested in Earth. You're not just another spacefaring species. You're something entirely new. Not new, Admiral. Just tested. Every predator on Earth, every natural disaster, every environmental challenge, they all played their part in making us who we are. The galaxy isn't ready for humanity because it's never encountered anything like us. As Krixval prepared to board his vessel, he turned one last time to Blackwood. For what it's worth, Colonel, you've earned my respect. And my concern. That's all we ask for, Admiral. Respect what we are, concern yourself with what we might become, and remember, everything you've seen here was just practice. The crystalline ship lifted off from Earth's surface, carrying with it a message that would reshape galactic politics. Humanity wasn't just surviving in the galaxy, they were preparing to thrive in it. Their death world hadn't just made them strong, it had made them unstoppable. As Earth shrank in his viewport, High Admiral Krixval began composing his report. It would be simple, direct, and unmistakable in its warning. Humanity is not a species that exists despite their deadly homeworld. They are deadly because of it. Each human carries within them the potential for transformation, adaptation, and evolution beyond any known limits. They do not view death as an end, but as a lesson. They do not see threats as obstacles, but as opportunities for growth. In short, Earth is not a death world because it is dangerous to humans. Earth is a death world because it created humans to be dangerous to everything else. In the academy below, Colonel Blackwood watched the alien ship disappear into the atmosphere. Around her, the next generation of humanity's defenders continued their training, each one carrying within them the potential to reshape the galaxy. The message had been sent. The warning had been given. Humanity was ready for whatever came next.